Hello, y'all. How you doing? Hopefully the volume is okay. Turn it up a bit. Uh, and let me know if I should adjust anything. It looks like it's going okay. So, as promised last time, I'll talk a little bit since we're in voting season about the Declaration of Independence of the United States. So, it seems like a document that not too many people pay much attention to. They pay more attention to the amendments and such and argue about what they say about certain rights. We will talk about why that's sort of a backwards approach. So this is the declaration from the U.S. Archives or the National Archives. You can see the link in the page there at archives.org. You just search for the Declaration of Independence. And so I'll read through a bit of it. I won't be long. They point out a few key ideas. And I'll be back in about an hour for some dirt. So, but you can see the description of the next video to come. So it says in Congress, July 4th, 19, actually let me, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. And I do notice, by the way, that United is lowercase, but States is uppercase. It signifies the uh, idea of the strength of state powers versus federal powers. Under the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with one another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So this is a long-winded way of saying that they see a reason to separate themselves from the government that they were under, and they wanted to list all the reasons why. So these are all the reasons that come afterwards, referring to how the King of Britain was trying to absolve them of over absolute tyranny over them. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, this line here is the forerunner to the amendments in the sense that our rights are recognized by the founders as inalienable, meaning they can't be given or taken away. They're inherent in our being. So when we get into like the amendments, freedom of speech, right to bear arms, those don't give rights according to the United States government as it was set up to be. Those recognize that the government has no power to infringe upon those rights. So, for instance, the freedom of speech is saying they've already recognized that we have the unalienable right to freedom of speech, for instance. And the government that we're setting up, because we've already had to deal with tyranny from Britain, we're going to put in writing that this government doesn't have any power to infringe upon that. Or the Second Amendment, because it seems common enough knowledge that uh, the revolution, part of the main reason was that they were coming to take away the guns from the colonists. Either it was coming to take away the guns or they were trying to keep the guns. It was some situation where uh, uh, they had to stop themselves from being disarmed. And then the war began. So having to deal with that, they put in writing that the government has no authority to restrict our bearing of arms. And it literally says shall not be infringed. And nowadays people quibble about what this or that word may mean or says. But going back to the founding document, we know that the government has no authority to limit that right in any way. And When you look at people who looked at tyrannous regimes in detail and espouse upon those, one of the things that tyrannies do is disarm the populace so that you can't defend yourself against their tyranny. Uh, this right here points out the fact that any gun laws or any infringements, whatever, are infringements. They have no authority to do any of that. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. So notice this says to secure these rights. In other words, rights are not given by the government. They can't be taken by the government. The government is set up to protect our expression of our rights. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends of securing our inalienable rights to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to themselves seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So this is saying that the government is instituted by the people, and if it's not serving us, it's our right to disband that government. And uh, one of the things that's going on, let me make sure the chat is showing. I see there's some people join. Let me see here. Welcome, eyes of Charlotte. You say eyes of Charlotte and Bella. America's a basket case. What do you mean? So I'll look for your follow-up comment on that. So much bullshit and woke rubbish. Ah, you're correct. Uh, I mean, the woke rubbish is bullshit, of course. Uh, People can believe what they want, as you just read. This is recognizing the fact that our rights are unalienable, including the right to believe whatever you want. The problem with the wokest people is they want to impose their beliefs on you. It's bad enough that it's false beliefs. Like a man can't become a woman can't become a man. Just identifying as a man or a woman when you're a woman or a man doesn't change you into the other thing. Uh, but they want to get in positions where they can grade your papers or hire you or fire you or make the laws and try to impose all of this stuff on other people. So basically, it's trying to institutionalize insanity. But yeah, that's one reason why I'm into physics because it's less likely, and I am aware that some of that stuff is in it. Physics realm. Like I remember reading or watching or hearing about one physics class where the professor uh, had assigned the problem, a physics problem, and was marking down people for referring to, like it was, this person dropped the ball from however height, how long it takes to hit the ground, something like that. And people referred to the person as man or woman, and it took off points because they didn't you didn't have their identity or something like that. It was something crazy like that. What is less likely in physics? I mean, the other like the humanities, I guess you would call them, the social sciences. Those are replete uh, with that stuff. So yeah, and I says division seems to be a core value of most. Well, that goes even beyond America or government. I mean, that goes to human nature in a sense. That's a whole other conversation there, but that is true. Uh, uh, that division is prevalent. Uh, yeah, pronoun thing. Yeah, I don't agree with or believe in that. The pronoun thing is definitely part of the gender ideology, critical race theory. You know, uh, that whole plethora of nonsense. But they have the right to believe it. It's just they cross the line when they try to impose it on others, which they very actively do. But so back to the rights. It's interesting that people in America, speaking of the American people, are being uh, manipulated. Is perhaps the word, or deceived, or coddled, whatever. And I've heard people say before, coddled into demanding that their rights be taken away. Uh, People like David Icke and who's the I can't believe I can't remember the guy's name. I have his video on my channel, at least a snip of his video talking about gun rights and how uh despots and tyrants go to uh weigh guns when they want to enact their tyranny. I'll find that video and post it in the chat right now. William Cooper. So these people talk uh get ready to enact their full tyranny. I mean, they do is go ahead and take away the gun so you can't defend yourself. So it's amazing that in America, when we have this document here that's talking about inalienable rights and you know that they can't be taken or get given, that people are demanding gun laws and such. So it just shows how far removed American people have gotten from the core ideals that made America. I go back and forth whether America really exists anymore or whether it exists as a fraction or a part way, you know. Or you could talk about 9/11, right? Uh, I looked into it a bit. It seemed to me that it was an inside job, like with the thermite that they found uh, at the scene. That seems pretty damning. There's some people who talked about the airplanes being remote controlled. I don't have any, I didn't really find any evidence on that, but uh, that's not to say that the whole government did it, but some aspect or faction of the government. Uh, People like uh, Thomas Sowell talk about how when he worked in government, he found that the government have their own interests. He worked, and I believe, in the employment division or part, and he discovered that the laws they were passing to supposedly help people were hurting it. Like minimum wage laws were cutting people out of jobs. But no minimum wage laws, more people were able to work. They were able to work younger because they was able to work with less pay. One can argue that it keeps inflation down, so prices are lower, so that you can afford with less. But then when they raise the minimum wage, the employers either are unwilling or unable to pay it, so they fire people to close their business, and it gets worse. And he discovered stuff like this, and they didn't want to hear it. He had the facts and evidence, but it became clear to him that they simply was protecting their jobs. It's their that's how they make their living, pumping out these laws. They're not only pumping out these laws, but enforcing and monitoring these laws and the implementation. So he thought they had their own agenda. So that group of people have their own agenda, destructive to the American people for their own personal purposes. So that's the reason that another one's going to have their own purpose. That whatever the reason they did the tower thing. But it's been a while since I looked into it, and I mean, I was convinced with what I found, but I knew it was very difficult to hear. It was frightening to me at the time. These are the people who we give power to arrest and take taxes, and there's some group in there who will do that. It's crazy, but that's why we need to recognize and maintain that our rights are unalienable, so that the time comes when we do need to defend ourselves outright, we have the means to. So if so, basically now you could say whatever tyranny is there is still in a sense the mask or attempted to be because you know we have the means to a large extent to defend ourselves. But I'm pretty sure the more gun laws are deceptively imposed upon people or deceptively asked for, it'll get worse. Like I knew somebody from Australia where they was able to get all the guns away from people. And he said where he's living is horrible. He was talking about how all of the police are armed and they started to become very unpleasant to be around, put it that way. And one of the things he mentioned, he was like, they're the only ones with guns. And we didn't even talk about that. I don't even know how the topic came up. Maybe it was bothering him or something. He was talking about they're the only ones with guns. I remember him highlighting that fact. So he felt it. He felt the difference of being in a situation where you're under a government unarmed and that government is becoming tyrannical, right? And, we could look at what happened to the Jewish people in Germany, right? And we could look at what's happening to the people in North Korea now. So it's amazing. The IS says every empire comes to an end. America is teetering to remain in control. Yeah, that could be what it is. I mean, I've seen and heard that idea before that America is coming to an end, but uh, and again, like I said earlier, maybe it's already ended. I mean, you have people openly acting against this principle in government. You have people, America is a republic. Like if you think about the Declaration of the Pledge of Allegiance to the republic for which it stands, right? Politicians are calling it a democracy in public. Politicians are demanding or pushing for gun control. These people should be at least out of office, maybe even in prison for tyranny or trying to incite tyranny or something. But at the least, they should all be out of office. So we want to mention this. Like we're in voting time. If we really are about freedom and liberty, we need to vote any politician who's pushing for or supporting any kind of gun restriction. They need to be removed. And all the ones that's there, all the gun restrictions that's there now, or any arms restrictions that are there now, we need to acknowledge as unconstitutional, meaning it's surpassing the limits that's been placed on the government, and they need to be removed. And any politician who pushes against that, they need to be removed too. So, for those who vote, a sensible vote in that regard would be to vote anybody out who is against us defending ourselves or being able to defend ourselves against government, and voting in those who are respective of that right and are into removing the tyrannous restrictions that are there now. Oh yeah, I mean I've heard that before. There's two problems with that. One, like I said, I knew somebody in Australia, and to him it didn't seem too easy to get. So uh, perhaps you're in Australia, maybe it's easier to get where you're at, or whatever the case is. But I didn't get that from him. Uh, the way I got it from him was it was set up in such a way to where the government has guns and they're essentially not going to get them. The second thing is it's easy to say, oh, well, all you have to do is pass the checks. But then whoever's in control of the checks are in control of whether you get a gun, right? So uh, it's kind of like some people are talking about in America, uh, uh, sensible gun background check, sensible gun laws. Well, who decides sensible? If somebody sees you get angry about something, can they then say, "Oh, well, he's a threat, and now we have to take away his guns"? It's possible. People could decide whatever reason they want. People could change the checks whenever they want. So if there's some kind of check in the way of you getting access, that means that means you don't have access. That means it's up to them to give you access, and that's contradicting unalienable rights. If in order for you to believe in the religion you want, you have to pass the checks put out for you, then you're not free to believe in the religion you want. Well, again, criminal records is up to the people who make the laws to decide if you're a criminal, right? So I don't know I don't know in detail how it goes in Australia. Like I said, I just know from when I talked to him with the friend I knew there and going and here and there seeing going around. I know how it is in America. I know that there's police that overstep their bounds. For instance, they search you without provocation illegally, right? There's people who've had drugs planted on them by police, right? So if the rule is that you can't have a criminal record and the police plant drugs on you and you get a criminal record, well, now you can't get a gun. I never said it was the answer to safety. I said it's allows one to defend yourself, and that's the thing. And that's one of the reasons or the logical, I would say, manipulations that's utilized to con people into giving this up. People want to be safe. So let's disarm everybody and then we're safe. But I'm sure you know in Australia, robberies didn't stop, rapes didn't stop, so on and so forth. I mean, the fact is, uh, there's people who want to do you harm. Some of them are in government, some of them are not. And not having the ability to defend yourself doesn't make you more safe. Hmm. Let me get some water. I'll be right back. Like I was saying, not being able to defend yourself doesn't make you more safe. Well, like I said, from anyone who might want to attack you, whether it's in government or not in government. Like I said, I'm pretty sure robberies didn't stop in Australia. I'm sure rapes didn't stop in Australia. I'm sure burglary didn't stop in Australia. I'm sure those things didn't stop. But taking away guns doesn't make everybody suddenly not want to harm you. There's still people out there harming people. Matter of fact, I just saw a video about I don't know, a month ago, where this guy was out going to this sort of event in the country with where people don't have guns, and he was followed, and the guy attacked him. He had to defend himself with his hands. I'm not saying shit doesn't happen, but I don't know one person that has been in a bad situation that a gun would have been helped. All right. Well, if that's the case, why don't we think about uh, Nazi Germany, where people were being herded off to gas chambers? Are you aware of that? That's what happened in Nazi Germany, correct? With they call it the Holocaust. So, what do you think would have happened if only Hitler had guns and missiles and planes, and every other country on earth was disarmed? What do you think would have happened? So Hitler's doing what he's doing. You know what Hitler was doing, and not as we're doing. But imagine a world where only Hitler and the Nazis have weapons, and everybody else is disarmed. Waiting for Iz's response. What Iz think would happen in that scenario? Well, you can see it as an emotional or not. It's up to you to see it that way. But the fact is, if Hitler was the only one with guns and weapons, not only would all the Jews continue to have been killed, but probably the rest of the world who he didn't see fit as well. So whether you see it as an emotional argument or not is irrelevant to the fact that we saw what Hitler was doing with the power he had, and it wasn't us uh, putting all our guns away and just thinking we're safe because we're disarmed that stopped it. There was a whole bunch of people with a whole lot of guns and planes and stuff that went over there and and made it stop. So that's an extreme example, but that's one you could relate to. But again, living in America where we have guns, I'm aware of situation after situation where people are robbed at work or are tempted to be. People are trying to get burglarized and they stop the person with their gun. I mean, maybe there's something else that could have been done. But the fact is, what had to be done in the end was that war was needed to stop it. It's like there's many people who, like the person I just told you about, the one who was in the country with no guns and he got followed. Nobody would help him, and he ended up having to defend himself with his hands. Luckily, he was able to physically defend himself, so he was not seriously hurt. Uh, but that's an example of if he had a gun, he could have defended himself more easily. But the thing about it is, I think any honest and comprehensive look at history shows that people being armed is better. Uh, All of that sounds good, and we can all still do that. Um, but it is interesting that people are all about empowerment and self empowerment, but only with certain things. In other ways, disempowerment is a good thing for some reason. Disempowerment is a good thing for some reason. Yeah, all of that stuff sounds good. Being smart, but the fact is, sometimes you're smart and all this stuff, and things still happen. And in the end, like I said before, the ultimate answer or the reason why is so that we can defend ourselves against a tyrannous government. That's why I was pointing out here that America, they had to use their arms to defend their inalienable rights against King Britain, who was imposing absolute tyranny. That's the ultimate reason why they put in the Constitution that the United States government would not be able to impose upon on weapons. Uh, I mean, if you're under the impression that passing the rules and checks, having rules and checks in place is a good thing, then it's sort of like, you know, perhaps it's not accurate to say against having guns, since you're not saying, just ban them all uh, completely. But still, it's like a soft against, because again, now you have this red tape wall that you have to go through, which means one, that's a tacit idea that is not an inalienable right, and two, it's up to whoever's making the rules to determine ultimately what do you do. Like I said, somebody gets framed for a crime. Well, if the rule is that you can't have a criminal record, then you can't get one. Uh, some people are talking about psychological exams or what have you. Well, if the psychologist says, you know what, I think he's, I'm worried about him, well, you can't get a gun, right? And as we know, people can be corrupted either with money or with malice or whatever. And it's just different ways of infringement. I just hear the right to bear arms argument as a solution. I ain't saying you're saying, yeah, okay, clarify that last statement one more time. I just hear the right to bear arms argument as a solution. I ain't saying you're saying it. Okay. I mean, I am saying that it's a solution for safety. I am saying that. And again, there's many examples of people who defended themselves either actively or not simply being able to produce the weapon uh, to protect themselves. Sometimes from home robbers, rapists, potential rapists, and so on and so forth. So in America, it happens. Sometimes you have to look for the stories because now it seems like there's a push to try to get people to want to be disarmed. So I don't think they're highlighted as much as, like a shooting will happen and they'll highlight that. Uh, 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 but there's people who protect themselves. But yeah, we could disagree. But like I said, the extreme example of Nazi Germany shows If all the Jewish people were armed, I doubt the Holocaust would have occurred either as it did or at all. Or if all the North Korean people were armed, horrible over there. I've heard. Pretty sure it's North Korea. Sometimes I get them mixed up. I'm pretty sure it's North Korea with the tyranny of the guy and people starving and uh, that lady came out, Yeonmi Park, I believe her name is, and talked about how horrible it is there. And, you know, the thing about it is though, if if let's say uh, the American people and everybody around the world all get duped into disavowing recognition of their inalienable rights and believing that government can impose what you can have and do it, how can you defend yourself? I won't have to say it anymore because eventually, uh, something like Nazi Germany is going to happen again, just like it's happened over and over and over. We've heard the names. I haven't looked into it in detail, but Mao and Pol Pot and all of these different massacres that happened over history after the population is disarmed or towards the subset that's disarmed. Because, like I said, as Thomas Sowell found out, people and there's factions of people in government that have their own purposes, their own, they're seeing to their own ends, not the good of the people. Just like average people do. These people who get into government, they're not angels, they're just people. They could be bad and they could go bad. And so I won't have to say anything, but it'll be, if not us, our children or our grandchildren who are, may not even be aware that they were ever a time when they could be armed, but they're living through the tyranny that so many different groups of people before us have lived through. And as I said, we have to go save with guns. There's Jewish people, large number of them are alive today because we had the weapons to go in and stop them from being destroyed under the abject tyranny they were under. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Uh, uh, but anybody who wants to can scroll through again, see about the inalienable rights. How definitely at least the way the country was set up, government has no right or authority in America to limit access to weapons. All of the politicians who enforce it or push for it should be ousted. That's how we can use our vote coming up. And I guess we'll see what happens. But I'll be back in 30 minutes. Somebody's supposed to come on, and apparently he's mastered gravity and relativity and all this stuff better than I understand than everybody else. So I thought it'd be interesting to listen to all these things and see what he has to say. And I think it'll be amusing. So I'll be back in about 30 minutes, and hopefully he shows up, and we'll see what the conversation is about. So I'll talk to y'all in a bit, about 30 minutes.